Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva on the U.S. Supreme Court's birthright citizenship ruling and her views on conditions at the Florence ICE Detention Center. Also tonight, an immigration attorney will have more on today's birthright citizenship ruling, and a DACA recipient shares her personal journey and the future of her youth-led nonprofit. Those stories and more next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your public television station.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. A major U.S. Supreme Court decision on birthright citizenship came down today, and there are continued concerns over reports of detainees being mistreated at the Florence ICE Detention Center. For more on both of these stories, we welcome Arizona Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva. Congresswoman, good to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us. You're back there in D.C. I'm sure the town is abuzz over the birthright citizenship decision by the U.S. Supreme Court. They upheld the 14th Amendment. Your thoughts on today's ruling?
Well, today's Supreme Court decision reaffirmed what we have known all along. If you are born in this country, you are a United States citizen. There was never a legitimate legal question. It was a basic reading comprehension test of the Constitution. And the 14th Amendment couldn't be clearer. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. At its core, this case was rooted in Trump's anti-immigrant agenda and his effort to redefine who gets to be American and what this country looks like.
As far as the Trump administration and a few of the Supreme Court justices, they're saying that the 14th Amendment, it was never meant for everyone. It was meant for freed black slaves and their descendants. What do you make of that? Is there a point in there?
No, there isn't. This is perhaps the most blatant unconstitutional action this administration has ever taken. And it's concerning to me and noteworthy, obviously, that this was a split decision, 6-3. So organizers, members of Congress, we're not assuming that this fight is over. It's going to continue, and we have to be ready for it.
And last question on this before we get to the Florence ICE Detention Center. You say that there's no kidding yourself, that fight's not over. Where do you think the fight goes? What do you think would be next?
Oh, I think that this is just the beginning of the number of times that this administration is going to try to, he's been arguing this birther since he ran with Obama. And what this administration and the GOP are very successful at doing is scapegoating people, making it seem as if because of immigrants, because of people that are coming to this country and have children here, that they're the reason why Americans are unsuccessful, why this country is in the situation that it's in. And it's actually the complete opposite. Because of immigrants and because of their contributions, America is what it is, and the opportunities are endless for that.
We'll have more on the decision here coming up a little later in the program, but I want to get to the ICE Florence Detention Processing Facility. First of all, what is this facility designed and supposed to do?
Well, it's supposed to be, as it was explained to me, a place where people are processed short term. So depending on what kind of staging it is, whether it's somebody coming into the detention system, the ICE system, or leaving and departing and going to another facility or on a plane to go to another country, their country of origin sometimes. That's what this is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a very short-term, 72-hour sort of situation. But what we've heard and what I've seen is the complete opposite.
What else have you seen as far as the conditions there? Because I think there's a quote here that it was deeply disturbing what you had witnessed. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it's the unannounced visits that are really the only way that I feel I can get an accurate read as to what's really happening. And the only way right now the public is able to get even like a verbal glimpse as to the real conditions that are going on inside, since media are strictly prohibited from going in. Los Coños have been described to me by a gentleman who was there. He said for 3 weeks. And when he started talking to me about it, he choked up. He couldn't clearly articulate how bad it was. The facilities that I've seen are really horrible. And when I was asking, where's Los Coños, when I went to Florence, they said, we don't know what you're talking about. So I have to find out real specific, like the name of every specific area. And when I asked, I want to go to the staging facility, I thought that's where I went. And even then, it was pretty overcrowded. When I was asking people, are you eating? They're like throwing up like ugly, like, a sandwich that looked really old and wrapped up, and it just did not look edible. And while I was there, all of a sudden they're pushing in all of these like to-go boxes of food that looks very edible. And that's the same situation that I saw in Dilley, Texas, when we have people that are like having hunger strikes because the food is so bad. And then when I get there and other members of Congress get there, it's like a spread, of the best kind of food that you could ever want, and pretending that that's what happens every day.
And that again was with the scheduled visit, but you're saying the surprise visit showed a completely different picture.
The surprise visits really show the overcrowding situation. Like when I went to A-Rock in Mesa, that facility, there were so many people in one space that was really made for about 21 people. And if I asked those gentlemen to sit down, they would not be able to sit down without sitting like 2 and 3 on top of each other. So the overcrowding conditions are scary. They don't have the air on. There are no facilities, because these are not, in theory, supposed to be long-term facilities, but they're becoming more and more that way, which is why I think it's so important for us to really push forward the bill that I introduced, which would limit the time in these areas to 12 hours.
To 12 hours. Also, is there not legislation regarding the conditions of the facilities?
Yeah, well, we've been trying to, I mean, there's so many pieces of legislation, especially to anyone who has gone to visit, and many more members of Congress continue to go to unannounced visits. I think that when you look at the conditions that I've seen when I went to Texas, when I saw the ones in Mesa, the conditions are very similar in that it's just inhumane. And it is a moral stain on this country, and just wrong on the most basic level.
For those who say on the other side, who see this very differently than you, they will say that these people aren't supposed to be here. These are supposed to be detention centers for those convicted or suspicious of criminal activity, violent activity, these sorts of things. They're saying it's not meant to be all that comfortable. It's meant to be, as you mentioned, a short-term detention center for them to be moved elsewhere. When they say that the conditions there are not that important considering the people being held, you say...
I say that that's the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. And that's why I keep saying the system is inhumane. 91% of people detained are being held in privately operated facilities. That means that someone is getting paid a lot for this is the reward for many of these corporations who donated millions to the Trump campaign. Now they're getting their payout. And to the facilities that I've seen where they get $15 million a month flat, corporations are making money hand over fist. And the people that are in these facilities, the vast majority have committed no crime. They have not been convicted of any crime. And the whole, just to give you an example, there is a man that I saw in Florence, visited him. 4 months later, he was released, and now he has legal permanent resident status. If he was such a hardened criminal and such a risk to this country, why would we give him legal permanent residence 2 weeks after he was released?
Last question before we go real quickly, because we're running out of time here. Is this issue softening? Are you seeing more movement here regarding keeping these folks at a lesser amount of time? Is anything changing?
It's actually getting worse. We're seeing more and more of a push from this administration and of ICE to open up more detention facilities in warehouse environments that were made to warehouse supplies and equipment, not people. We're going to see more of a problem than less.
Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva. Congresswoman, always a pleasure. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So where's the body?
The most dreadful thing has happened.
Well, I've got a hunch.
What's that?
It looks like some sort of code.
He's hiding something. Then we keep digging.
Okay, let's go.
So, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
It should stimulate all your senses.
great solutions come from very humble places.
I'm Miles O'Brien, and I'm searching the globe for solutions. This part of the world has 3 wild jaguars.
Undeniably, it's melting. The question is why?
Join me. Can we adapt?
Yes, we will adapt. There is no choice.
Let's meet the big, bold thinkers.
If you have an opportunity to make an impact, why not do it now?
With a resolve to solve.
Coming in August to Arizona PBS. Arizona PBS wants to wish a very happy birthday to our Arizona PBS Kids Club members that are having a birthday. Thanks so much for being a part of the Arizona PBS Kids Club. And if you'd like to see your name here during your birthday month, get a grown-up's help to visit azpbs.org/family to learn about our Arizona PBS family membership. So happy birthday from all of us at Arizona PBS.
As we mentioned, the U.S. Supreme Court today rejected President Trump's effort to end birthright citizenship. The High Court upheld the Citizen Clause of the 14th Amendment, which allows birthright citizenship for children of undocumented immigrants and some temporary foreign visitors. Immigration attorney Elizabeth Chatham joins us now for a look at the legal aspects of today's decision. Good to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Your thoughts? Were you surprised by the decision?
I was and I wasn't. I wasn't surprised with the actual holding. I did feel that the position was much stronger to maintain the 14th Amendment, as is well settled and commonly understood that any child born on American soil is going to be a U.S. citizen regardless of the immigration status of their parents. That I was not surprised. I was surprised at the narrow split, that it was technically a 5-4 decision. 5 of the justices all agreed that on the constitutional element. There was one position with Justice Kavanaugh where he agreed on judgment. So that's why in the news you'll see it's a 6-3 decision, but he dissented and on the rationale, and he dissented on the basis of a federal statute rather than the Constitution.
Well, and by saying that it's not the Constitution that I'm ruling here, it's this federal law, is he not kicking door open, showing some light, saying, here, Trump administration, if you really want to address this, go this route, don't go that one?
Right. He was suggesting that the court would relook at this issue if there was a congressional amendment, a constitutional amendment, or if there was even a law that created additional exceptions. That would then also be something that could be probably kicked up. The can would be kicked up the curb to go to the Supreme Court.
The 14th Amendment, which was the key, the Citizenship Clause, the key here, all persons born or naturalized in the U.S. and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens. The administration argued that if you are born in another country, you're not necessarily subject to the jurisdiction thereof here, you're subject to the jurisdiction thereof there. Did they have a point?
That was really interesting. I mean, that was the losing argument, that there was an argument on domicile. Where is your domicile? And what does that mean? Does that attach to a legal immigration status? Do you have to even have a status? And then it also attached to the concept of allegiance. Where does this individual have allegiance? Is it to the United States? Is it to their foreign country? But then Justice Gorsuch kind of opened it up to say, you know, what if someone they're stateless, they have no domicile. So having no domicile, what does that leave for that child? And then does the child have the ability to make a determination on allegiance or domicile?
Yeah, yeah. There was also an argument from the Trump administration that the 14th Amendment was meant to address African Americans, blacks who were just delivered from slavery and their descendants. It was not meant for anyone else but that particular group. But the other argument was what? If that's what the Constitution wanted, that's what the Constitution should have said.
That's what it should. Right. So there's no language about mother, father, race, allegiance, domicile. That is not the language in the 14th Amendment. I think a very important point is that the Equal Protection Clause also applies, which means that any child belongs in the United States. They are a U.S. citizen universally. It doesn't matter what country their parents are from or what their parents' immigration status is or what their allegiances are. It's the fact that they were born on U.S. soil that controls the definition of who is a citizen.
It sounds like the court basically said this is not a question of what the law should be. It's a question of what the Constitution says the law is.
Correct.
And that's the bottom line.
That is the bottom line. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So as far as future challenges, how does Congress get involved in something like that? What about a constitutional convention for something? We're hearing all sorts of things.
Absolutely. I think there's like a full spectrum of ideas kind of floating around. You're absolutely right that Congress can convene and have a constitutional convention to amend the 14th Amendment. There could be legislation also introduced by Congress to define more narrowly the exceptions. There are exceptions today for who can be a citizen based on if they're a foreign dignitary that had children in the United States. Those children would not necessarily be considered U.S. citizens, as one example. There's also going to be, I think, a little bit more possibly changes to how CBP administers admission of foreign nationals into the U.S. Some people are floating around a pregnancy question that could be on documentation when you're arriving at the U.S. asking a woman, are you pregnant? Are you aware of pregnancy?
Is that the birther scheme that I keep hearing about?
I don't know who came up with it, but it is something that's being floated right now.
Because the Department of Justice is now pushing U.S. attorneys to punish, quote, birther tourism schemes.
Right. That is definitely an investigation, an active investigation by the Department of Justice. They're looking at travel companies. They're looking at more organized outfits that are bringing women and families to the U.S. and, for this purpose of having children here.
All right, Liz Chatham, partner, Stinson LLP. Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Aliento is celebrating 10 years of serving immigrant youth in Arizona. Aliento was created to help and support DACA recipients through mentorship and other programs. DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals and refers to an immigration policy that protects certain undocumented immigrants who came to the U.S. as children and protects them from being deported. Reina Montoya is the founder of Aliento and herself a DACA recipient. Good to see you again.
Good to see you as well.
Congratulations, 10 years. Did you think it was going to last for 10 years?
No, honestly, it was never intended to be a nonprofit. I was 25 with a lot of hope, wanting to solve a problem, and here we are 10 years later where we have solved some problems, but there's a lot more to do.
The mission seems to be serving immigrant youth. How exactly, what kind of services are offered? What do you do?
Yes, we really focus on supporting immigrant youth and U.S. citizen children and students that come from mixed immigration status family to transform trauma into hope and action. The way we do that is we offer education initiatives, mental health initiatives through the arts. So we really help them go to college, figure out a pathway post-high school to invest in their career and also do advocacy.
Have those goals, has that mission changed over the years? Has what Aliento does, has it evolved over the years?
It has definitely evolved. I mean, even the DACA program, when we were really launching Aliento back in the summer of 2016, a lot of the DACA recipients were the young people, were out of high school, were in college. Now, fast forward 10 years later, they are the parents of our children that we serve, about 300,000 U.S. citizen children. Their parents are DACA recipients. So we have seen that definitely it has evolved about who we serve.
But it's still youth oriented, correct?
Yes, our primary constituency is children ages 7 to 24, and we really focus on supporting those young people. But unfortunately, a lot of our young people now are undocumented because they don't have a DACA program to apply to.
Well, let's talk about the DACA program. What is it? We've had you on before, and the question every time I ask is, what's the latest with DACA? What are you hearing? What is the latest?
We're still having a pending court decision coming out of Texas, so we're still holding our breath on that decision. In the meantime, what has happened is that this administration has systematically provided a lot of delays, so a lot of DACA recipients are losing their jobs or they're potentially at risk of deportation because we haven't heard a resolution, even though the DACA recipients did everything that they were asked to and applied 6 months before their expiration date.
The impact on education for some of these people, what are you seeing? What are you hearing?
A lot of students are having heightened levels of anxiety and stress. It's harder for them to concentrate. Some of the kids who are born here, they're worried that mom and dad are not going to be able to pick them up after school. There's definitely a lot of uncertainty with the community. But on the other side, there's also a lot of hope. What I get to see is that students are re-enrolling back to school. One of our huge milestones at Aliento is that we were able to link arms with the Arizona voters, and now we have a reinstated in-state tuition. So our students are going back to the classrooms and they're graduating. We have our first nurse who's now a graduate, no longer a student, and is helping patients.
Well, and that sounds like an accomplishment. Talk about, is that the biggest accomplishment? What do you look back on 10 years and go, that was a biggie?
Yes, I mean, definitely being able to reinstate in-state tuition, that now we have a pathway for higher education for our dreamer population. Now also, I would say that seeing the real stories of how that's being impacted. I mean, I see some of the kiddos in our programs who were in elementary, now they're graduating high school and they're getting ready to support their families. We have our first attorney who just passed her bar exam here in the state of Arizona. So definitely it's been really transformational to see both the systemic impact of having that opportunity to access in-state tuition to seeing our students graduating.
So you are seeing success out there, and there are positive stories. Of course, I got to look at some of the other side as well. The detention situation going on, especially here in Arizona, is that affecting the people that you serve?
Definitely, we have to deal with very difficult cases. That we even had a middle schooler who was wrongfully detained, and she was put in a shelter for 2 months, where we had to really support the school to figure out how do you have a reintegration plan, because this kid went without really in structure or any academic support for 2 months. So definitely it's been challenging to see that. We're seeing more students really worrying about whether they will continue. We have another person who reached out to Aliento asking us, like, can I apply for FAFSA even though that I'm a U.S. citizen, but then now my mom is detained? So how do I do that?
Right.
How do I fill up the FAFSA?
You mentioned someone reaching out to you. Is that how it usually works, people coming to you, or do you go to situations that you know need your help?
We do both. We meet people where they're at, and also because we've been now strong for 10 years, people have gotten to know about Aliento. We have over 75,000 people through our programs. 35,000 of them have been young people. So many of them said like, hey, I saw you on social media. I saw you on TikTok, on Instagram. Some of them we come into the schools and we provide that support to ensure that we're meeting students where they're at and reminding them that they belong, and then there's so much power and brilliance in them.
Last question here. Aliento, the name Aliento, what does that mean to you?
It translates into breath, but when you give aliento to someone, it's giving words of encouragement. So I think that in this world where we see so much division, we can either make a choice. Do we focus on the problem or do we focus on the solutions? And for me, that's the power of the American spirit, where we can really provide that encouragement to one another and ensure that we belong.
Yeah, and 10 years, did you ever think you'd be here in 10 years?
No, not at all. But I am really proud of the team and a lot of good people of faith and business leaders who have really supported us. This would have been possible if only Reina would be standing here, but I'm standing with a village of teachers, educators, business leaders, and students.
Well, congratulations, 10 years, Reina Montoya. Again, Aliento, good to have you here.
Likewise, thank you.
Thank you. And that is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
When you want to be more inspired, Arizona PBS delivers unforgettable experiences in music, theater, and the arts, thanks to members like you.